3:18, text number 8. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. This morning's verse. Sagam udastat salilasya gochare vinyasya tasyam adadhat swasatvam abhishtuto vishvasraja prasodayar apuryamano vibhudhai pashato ye right ray sagam udastat salilasya gochare vinyasya tasyam adadhat sasatvam abhishtuto vishvasraja prasodayar apuryamano vibhudhai pashatore Sagam udastat salilasya gochare abhishtato Sagam udastat salilasya gochare Varyamano vibhudhai pashatore Sagam udastat salilasya gochare vinyasya tasyam adadhat swasatvam abhishtuto vishvasraja prasodayar Apuryamano vibidhai pashyatore saha, the Lord. Gam, the earth. Udastat, on the surface. Salidasya, of the water. Gochare, within his sight. Vinyasya, having placed. Tasyam, to the earth. Adadhat, he invested. His own sattvam, existence. Avishtu taha, praised. Vishvasrija, by Brahma, the creator of the universe. Prasonayar, by the flowers. Apuryamanaha, becoming satisfied. Vibodhai, by the demigods. Pashyataha, while looking on. Arehe, the enemy. Translation: the Lord placed the earth within his sight on the surface of the water and transferred to her his own energy in the form of the ability to float on the water. While the enemy stood looking on, Brahma, the creator of the universe, extolled the Lord, and the other demigods rained flowers on him. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Those who are demons cannot understand how the Supreme Personality Godhead floated the earth on water. But to devotees of the Lord, this is not a very wonderful act. Not only the earth, but many, many millions of planets are floating in the air. And this floating power is endowed upon them by the Lord. Semicolon. There is no other possible explanation. The materialist can explain that the planets are floating by the law of gravitation, but the law of gravitation works under the control or direction of the Supreme Lord. That is the version of Bhagavad Gita which confirms by the Lord's statement that behind the material laws or nature's laws and behind the growth, maintenance, production, and evolution of all the planetary systems, behind everything, is the Lord's direction. The Lord's activities could be appreciated only by the demigods headed by Brahma, and therefore when they saw the uncommon prowess of the Lord in keeping the earth on the surface of the water, they showered flowers on him in appreciation of his transcendental activity. Tagamadastat salilasya gochare vinyashatasyam adadhat swasattvam avishtuto vishvasraja prasunayar apuryamano vibhutai pashyatore. So it's been a while from the previous verse. The previous verse was the demon was saying insulting words to Lord Varaha. And Lord Varaha was ignoring, although he felt something. He dismissed it because he had important service to do. And then the demon insulted further. Hey, you're running away. What kind of behavior is this for a hero? there's nothing reproachable for shameless creatures. He's invoking Dharma. There's a challenge from an adversary, you have to respond. And failing to respond is shameless. So, Ari, he's one of the descriptions of Krishna that describe his name. There's in the prefix or the suffix is Adi, the enemy of such and such demon. So the demon is the Adi, or the enemy. And before he was making insulting comments, now he's just watching the Lord's Leela. Very fortunate he's watching the Lord's Leela. Certainly he's getting some purification by viewing the Lord's Leela, but he's still has lots of covering to deal with. Emphasis in the purport goes to the amazing Leela of floating the earth on water. So, earth doesn't float on water. But the Supreme Lord made the earth float on water. So, how did he do that? Well, specifically, it says he invested the earth with his own power. The Sanskrit is sva sattvam. Sva sattvam, with his own existence. And in the purport, it's with his own power. So he invested the earth with his own power. This floating power is endowed by the Lord. So planets float, explanation, so different explanations. He says first there's no explanation, then he says gravity is the explanation. So where does the power of gravity come from? Where does everything come from? Just the laws of nature are given without an acknowledgement of the creator of the law and the enforcer of the law. It's kind of incomplete or silly. Where do laws come from? And where do enforcement of laws come from? If there's no person, then there's no law and there's no enforcement of the law. There can be law, but law requires enforcement as well. So both features requires person. So behind everything, sarva karana karanam, there's the supreme cause of all causes. And one of the causes, like the cause of something floating, is investing the power to something to float. Now, science can look at this object will float and that object will not float because there's laws of nature. And something, whatever their conclusions are, why something will float. But something that doesn't correspond with where do those laws, that what will float, what will not float, where do the laws come from? And where's the enforcement of the same question? So something that by those ordinary calculations shouldn't float, floats. How does that happen? So the indication, sva sattvam, the Lord makes it happen. Supposing one doesn't have that understanding, and then there's another explanation. And I forget how it works. But something along the lines of, if you add up all the mass of planets, it doesn't equal the floating of the planets in space. There's some calculations like that. Sorry, I don't have that data and not a very good memory. But so laws of nature that explain things, there's a principle, and how much water does the principle hold? Is it a strong principle? What to speak of? Where does the principle come from, and where does matter come from, and where does everything come from? And then there's the interaction with the demigods. Because the Supreme Lord became involved, prompted by the request of the demigods, help. So he, Lord Varaha, is doing things in such a way that demigods will recognize that he has responded. Not just the earth was lifted and things like that, but he's going to do additional things that indicate he is tuned in to their acknowledging and their feelings of gratitude. That they're doing a service unto the Supreme Lord, the maintainers of the universe, or the controlling deities. They're devotees doing a service, empowered this way, that way, the other way, doing some service. And when they run into some snag, then they appeal to the Supreme Lord. So he's doing, and he wants them to recognize. So on the one hand, his aloofness is letting them know, no sweat, it's no big problem. And they're acknowledging the prowess of the Supreme Lord to do things that they couldn't do, and that no one else could do. So they're showering flowers on him and singing praises of him for his capabilities. So this is the sura. Then there's the asura, who is seeing the same thing, but just speaking insulting words and chasing the Lord and wanting to have further fight. So the Lord obliges him. Yayatam mam prapadyante tangs tadaiva bhajamyaham. Living entities, as they have regard, Krishna reciprocates corresponding to their regard for him. So demons see on this end of the spectrum, the devotees, demigods see on that end of the spectrum, and he's reciprocating. Pretty difficult to balance everything, but he does it. And then comes this topic again, is going to come up tomorrow, I guess. He's angry. He's angry on a number of levels. He's angry at the insulting words. He's angry at what was done. The planets that he created, one of the planets he created was placed out of orbit and sunk to the bottom of the Garbhodak Ocean. So this is a disturbance to the natural order. So he's angry. But it's not the anger like, I did something and somebody messed up with something I did, so I'm angry. Putting living entities at risk by misconduct, ignoring the principle of the supremacy of the personality of Godhead. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his own way, in his own time, in his own manner, he gives protection. Rakshishati Vishwas. So when there's danger, a principle of the 6 principles of surrender, one of them is feel completely dependent upon the Supreme Lord for protection. And how he, and in what time frame he does, that's his own choosing. But he gives protection to his devotee. Then comes this topic, how long will it take? I'll just make reference to it. During our Memorial Day weekend, one full class was given to that question by Radhika Raman. I really liked the class. Why does he wait so long? Increase of dependence. And why a devotee has to be put in the position of having a difficulty anyways, because if the Lord is kind, why put his devotee into difficulty and then not respond swiftly, but in his own way, in his own time, but without fail, he's there. Anyway, it's a nice class. I really like his class. It's very penetrating analysis of the reciprocation of the Supreme Lord. He keeps his word. He gives protection. Pritranaya sadhunam, vinashaya chaduskatam, dharma sangstapanartaya. So his pastimes are for those purpose. Sambhavami yuge yuge. And he's not obliged to do it the way we think he should do it. Or he does it this way, this time, so he should do it the same way next time. Quite variegated, quite fluid, but the principle doesn't change. He gives his protection. And he's going to deal with the demon, Hiranyaksha. But he's going to do it in a very dramatic way. He sometimes likes drama, and he does it in a very dramatic way. Club fighting, and this and that. And one last thing. In essence, or at the end of the day, these pastimes are they have the effect, and the intended effect is that we become attracted to and attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How he does what he does, he gives his word and he maintains his word in very creative ways, very exciting ways, sometimes very chivalrous ways, but in different ways, because he's unlimited. And to be eager to hear how he does what he does for the demigods, for Lord Brahma, for the demons, for the innocent people who are standing by and watching, and for future generations like us to hear, wow. I mean, he's amazing. Floating the earth, floating us. I mean, other Leelas in Ramayana, they made a bridge of stone. Or so many times Prabhupada would say floating planets in the air, floating the earth on water, floating planets heavier than, and that the buoyant surface is the air. So how? and behind whatever the idea, as he's saying here. If they say it's gravitation, where does that? Who's supporting that? Where does the law of gravitation come from? Who's the law maintainer? Who's the law creator? Who creates the space and who creates the planets in space? So it's one of the Chaturshloki verses that it's so much to do. The Chaturshloki verses have so much to do with the energies of the Supreme Lord. But one of the verses is like a spider. He, the spider, creates a web from his mouth. And then he moves about in the web. And then if he chooses, he can withdraw the web back into his body. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all of the flowers that are sent from by the demigods, where the flowers come from. Where did anything come from? So he's playing with his energies according to different relationships with different devotees, and floating the earth planet, no problem. Because he also allowed the earth planet would not float. And how did that happen if the earth can float? Because laws of nature, and he followed that law. It's just for a pastime. Very colorful. All attractive. Supreme Person. See if there's some discussion. Oh. You want to pass the microphone? Someone's got their hand up. Sri Radhika. Huh? You have. Who has? You what? You have a question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Maharaj, you were speaking about how Krishna reciprocates with the demons,
Yes.
and the demigods according to their regard.
Yeah.
However, it's not a mechanical reciprocation.
What?
It's not a mechanical...
Yes, not mechanical.
Yesterday evening you were saying, when Krishna saw Nanda Maharaj has disappeared, it was not a play acting, he was actually feeling distress and crying. And similarly in the morning verses in this series, we've been hearing about Krishna feels pain.
So personal. Yes.
And so the spiritual world is a realm of rasa, of emotions. Yet somehow when we come from our materialistic life into this, we're introduced into this world, there's a tendency to shun anything that's material, including feelings and emotions. There's sometimes, often, a tendency for this impersonalism because we think emotions are material. And in the realm of devotee care, we come across this often where people find it hard to access emotions and feelings because they have some bias towards that being material. I'm just wondering, is that just frustration? Is that just, part of the journey of maturing in Krishna consciousness for all of us? And what are some ways to... I'm assuming it's by hearing and appreciating this realm of rasa that you're introducing us to, that we can become comfortable and accept.
Your question reminds me of the daughter's question yesterday, the singer. And her, it's not the same, but it's directionally kind of similar. The pendulum can swing this way and the pendulum can swing that way. Detachment from things and detachment from feelings about things as one wants to move in a non-material direction or a spiritual direction. Definition by negation is, it seems to me, natural. It's not mature, but it's natural. And then if supposing the pendulum swings the other way, someone says, we're personalists, so we don't numb our feelings, and here's my feelings, blah, blah, blah. It has nothing to do with connecting to the source. It just has to do with whitewashing. And so to get to the stage, there has to be purification and refinement of intelligence. And where does intelligence come from? From super soul, the Dhammi Buddhi Yogam Tam. So error in this side of the pendulum swing and error on that side of the pendulum swing are easy to understand. What's more mysterious is just use the application in devotee care on the one hand, and on the other hand, we're not the body. So why get all caught up in emotions related to the body? After all, we're not the body. We're spirit soul. And I want to be on the platform of who I really am. And that's a starting point. So there's the response to the why and then what to do. Become mature. Okay, I'll become mature. But it takes a while to become mature. The two things, cleansing and awakening. Because many of us are involved in what's going on with Murari Chaitanya. Some Premananda and Subal, and I guess Subal's wife to some extent, are pretty involved. And it's not done just out of duty, it's done because all the years and years and years and years and years and years and years of service, and we can't say, you can't walk away. And so, and then how will Krishna be pleased? So what to speak of the soul within the body? So we deal with the body and with concern. And there's so many other examples. I know someone their father just died and they're grieving over the loss of their father. It's hard for them to function. So it's not, become emotionless, Prabhu, because after all, you're not the body. And as Prabhupada would say, my father is gone, but there he is, lying on the bed. So you never saw your father. So why are you lamenting when you can't see your father now? You couldn't see your father then. Why are you lamenting? So how to have the intelligence is required to have the right direction to emotion. And like this question yesterday, attachment, detachment. To what extent is attachment appropriate? To what extent is detachment inappropriate? So these are finer points. And if someone, devotee care takes a hit if there's too much detachment. But devotee care takes a hit if there's too much attachment. Huh? Yeah, you can mess up. Make the matters worse. Too much attachment. In the name of, we're personalists, Prabhu. So, it takes intelligence. In this case, in this question you're raising, it requires intelligence or refinement or purity or culture and not everyone's so intelligent and refined and cultured. So we err. We can err on either side of the pendulum. But why is this just very natural? If you're moving into spiritual, then you wind down and if not just eliminate the material or renounce or detachment, but not becoming numb. You have something.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. So I was thinking about the demons getting liberation, like in this case, Hiranyaksha. So he's doing a lot of insulting words and talking humiliating words to the Lord, but still the Lord is awarding the mukti.
No.
Sorry.
No. The destination of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu was not mukti. They were released from the reactions of their bad deeds, but they didn't attain Vaikuntha. You know that, right?
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I was thinking about the demons that Krishna killed.
Okay, that's different. That's Krishna.
So I was thinking about those demons also, except some instances like Putana. She thinks about the Lord as a Lord for a moment, but there are demons doesn't even recognize or realize the position of the Lord, but still they get the liberation.
Okay.
So I was just thinking about how is that, because their consciousness is not changing, as per my understanding. So how is that though they are getting...
Well, wait, why is that your understanding? That their consciousness is not changing? What's the foundation for your making that statement?
Because they were inimical to the Lord.
But supposing that inimical to the Lord is cleared,
in cases of Putana, we hear that she is thinking about, this is the divine child. But in other demons, we don't hear.
Well, we don't hear that. That's correct. But so what's taking place? Just stay with the question. What's taking place when they're not doing some service like Putana came like a mother, but with wicked motivations? Let me kill you. She came with some service, or the intention of some service, and then kill him. So the other demons, that's not their intention. Let me do some service. So without that intention on their side, how are they eligible for liberation? Is kind of what your question is. a nice question. I mean, my understanding is very simple. Because of the unlimited potency of, it's not the same, but it's similar to his investing his power in the earth planet to float on water. So he, Krishna being all merciful, gives them the capacity that not only their demoniac tendency and the reactions for the demoniac behaviors are cleared, that sense of becoming neutral, but a potency that their natural attraction for him is regained. We don't hear, I'm trying to think if there are examples in Acharya's commentaries. Can anyone think of some examples? Let me know, or speak up. Where, along with their having their sins eradicated by being killed by Krishna, that their attraction for Krishna has awakened by being killed by Krishna. The covering removed and the awakening taking place simultaneously. And then one by one, because it's all the demons, like, for example, those that were killed on Kurukshetra battlefield. They achieved liberation just by being killed in the presence of Krishna. So there's something about the potency, the super excellent potency of Krishna, that just being in Krishna's association, like we heard yesterday evening. Varuna saying, just by beholding you, this is the perfection of my life. So seeing Krishna still having still having some inimical attitude, so there's some combat, etc., or some difficulty between Krishna and that devotee. So many examples. Because they saw Krishna, they got awakened, they got awakened to their original consciousness by the potency of Krishna's glance, or they're seeing the form of Krishna, not in a material way. Anybody want to give examples of commentary from Acharya saying when demons killed by Krishna or in Krishna's presence, there's this changeover in consciousness by that event, seeing Krishna being killed by Krishna? It's a nice question. So there must be some commentary by Acharya somewhere on this. From? Okay.
So it seems easier for demons to go to Krishna than people like us. Why is that?
So just become a demon. It's the direct contact with Krishna. It's not other. It's not devotee, non-devotee, or devotee demon. It's the direct contact with Krishna. So it's not advised in common sense, but it's also not advised in Scripture that you act inimically towards Krishna because it's an easier path. The advice is that we try to serve Krishna to our capacity. And it's the focus upon Krishna that brings the benefit, not being inimical versus being favorable. So we're followers of the Vedas, and the Vedas indicate what they indicate. So we act favorably, anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulya, we reject the unfavorable. Supposing somebody embraces the unfavorable and they become inimical towards Krishna, well, they may meet a different end than being killed by Krishna, because they were inimical to Krishna. They get direct contact with Krishna, then that's good fortune. But the more likely is being favorable. Krishna will notice that favorable regard and make arrangements. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Guru Maharaj, the point that you had made about bhakti with Krishna in the center versus ourselves in the center.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that a lot and trying to introspect as to, I feel like I am keeping myself in the center, whether it is...
Your conditioned soul, really? And so?
So it seems like a very fine line in a way, and how do I really...
Bhakti. And bhakti is a sort of cultivation, right? So there's the acknowledgement of my conditioning. Here's where I am, there's where I want to go. And there's a big gap between where I am and where I want. So you just nurture bhakti, Krishna at the center, acknowledging my shortcomings and calling to Krishna to engage me and pick me up out of this self-centeredness. Because on your own effort, it's insufficient. And Krishna's capable, but he's not, he wants our love, not just wants our service. He doesn't need anything. Well, cultivate bhakti.
Maharaj, I have a comment and a question. The topic of gravitation fascinates me a little bit, and I'm not bought in personally. I'm not bought into that law only because of two things. On a grand scale, it breaks down.
Yes.
They can't explain, and you alluded to it, but they can't explain how universes are even kept together, because it only explains the mass of the universes according to their calculation. It's only 4% of what's needed to keep it all together. So they have this idea called dark matter, which is holding it all together, and nobody knows what that is. Then the second point about gravitation that I don't breaks down is in the microscopic level. If gravitation is a law, how come it doesn't apply in the more microscopic level? So I'm not bought into it. My question, that's my comment.
It's convenient. And anyway, go ahead.
My question is, if I were to ignore the fact that I have faith or trust in the fact that God is behind the whole show, and try to analyze it with my puny intelligence, and I look at the solar system as presented by modern science, it seems to me that it's a very interesting design. If God were to make it, it's a very interesting design to keep people busy trying to figure it out. And we'll never get, the road to figuring out existence of the cosmos is like unending, limitless. There's no way we can reach it with collective puny intelligences. So my question is, was this designed intentionally so that we get spun out and then ultimately surrender to Krishna?
Now, is there intelligent design behind Maya? Because the myriad network of ideas and permutations and combinations of concepts is without limit. So it's to me, the answer to your question is, it's just the nature of illusion. And so is there a design behind illusion? It's without limit. There's the modes of nature mix, the conscious living entity desiring to be the enjoyer, and being the creator, and being the supreme. Is there a design behind the unlimitedness of Maya? It seems to me it's quite fluid. Meaning circumstances and living entities having desires and conceptions and all those things. It's very fluid. It's more, for me, it's more a matter of principle. Illusory energy reciprocating with guna and karma of the living entities. Not that there's a design and then we fit into the design. To me, it's the principle, the illusory energy creating circumstances according to the guna and karma living entities that are very dynamic. It's a principle, not that the outcome is already pre-designed. Anything else? Your wife.
Guruji, when the earth fell into the water, so this is the water, like half the universe is covered with water. Is this what, I'm just trying to understand the mechanics of the earth.
That's the water that the earth fell in.
The half,
The Garbhodak Ocean.
and at this time, the earth is populated with living entities.
Earth is what?
Populated with living entities. So there's people on the planet.
I assume so.
So they're in the water.
So they're in the water, or drowned or something. Suffering, at least, for sure. If not dead. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki.